Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the head. I feel like that's especially the case on a Moonboard. Everyone knows the Moonboard's hard for the grade, and the hardest for each of them is the benchmarks. But what about the benchmarks? Today I'm going to have a look at the easiest benchmark and the hardest benchmark for the grade and see how they compare. I'm going to take the least amount of repeats as the hardest and the most amount of repeats as the easiest. Perhaps there's a more scientific way of working it out, but for the sake of ease, this is what we're doing. And for V3 easiest, we've got the warm-up problem. Banger. Nearly fell over there. Felt pretty cruisy. Nice fun movements. All flowed particularly well. I'm kind of anticipating that the most popular ones are going to be a bit easier for the grade and the least popular ones are going to be the hardest for the grade. But then there's a few other things like how nice it is to actually climb in terms of like, is the movement intuitive? Are the holds kind of in a nice position? Especially when you start getting into the more gnarly hold. Throwing up high into a Gaston and it's all just a bit awkward and feels like you're gonna break your fingers. Like, not amazing. The least amount of repeats, Maple by brettstephen. There's a bit of a difference there actually. Like over on that right hand side I felt like I wanted a foot and it just wasn't there. And pulling on some smaller holds, so felt like there was almost a grade difference between those two. That's nice. Nice flowy moves. Everything's where you wanted it to be. Maybe there's a better sequence, but awkward. Felt like a significant jump there from the V4s to that one. Long moves. I've always wondered too, is koala climbing Australian or is it just someone that's excited by koalas? I find that I've almost got a better chance of flashing when it's harder because I actually concentrate. I get too lazy when they're easy. It's a good thing that I've got to keep in mind, so it's like high chances of falling off potentially on these easier ones. Strange. I don't know how much I'll end up using these. I think maybe just like a big move there. That was a long way more difficult than the previous. Going through all this footage now, I've worked out that I've just skipped V6. I've gone 5 and then 7, which is why it felt like there was such a big gap. But let's go back to the bolo and I'll get the 2 V6s done and then we can come back and jump back into the normal stuff. I'm also pretty interested to see how many of these that I can flash. I've flashed up to V10 or 11, I think, on the Moonboard, maybe V10. I'd like to get to somewhere around there, like 9 I'd be happy with. If I fall off up before that, they've got me. Oh, we're into the woods. Interesting. Definitely starting to crank into the harder moves. So when it comes down to sequencing for these sorts of things, I do come up with a bit of an idea in my head what I'm gonna do on the way, but I feel like I'm more of a, how do you describe it? More of a feel climber, more intuitive in a way. So I come up with a bit of a plan, but then it's kind of like that Mike Tyson quote where it's like, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the head. And I feel like that's especially the case on a Moonboard where it's like, cool, my plan is this. Oh, hang on, no. And then you got to rely on your intuitiveness. We'll see how that plays out on this one. Oh God, it's got yellows. I hate them. This move at the start, like that's not great, but maybe like, right hand and again, come in, left foot up, hit this, there. This thing is bad. It's a bad hold. Maybe it's like just straight into the undercling. And then go duck, duck. Yeah, that was hard. That was good though. It's like, had an idea, kind of adapted it a little bit on the fly, paid off just. The Moonboard's really got that funny, feisty style to it, and there's nowhere to hide. You've got to want every single move. When I've not been in that real simple board climbing pull for a while, it actually gives me a real knock around. Gebrochener Knieboogie. I don't know. Anyway, it's by KimDe Wolff. This is where I feel like it really starts to kick off. I'm not very good at breathing. I'm also just coming off the back of like 10 days of being quite ill. Haven't actually done anything since that Kilter Board session. Yeah, 10 days ago. Certainly required to get the knuckles up on that one. And that first move, like, hard cross with attention. Baller stand, sick name, by Flo Brand. Yeah, we're in commitment territory now. Here we go. This looks brick. A little concerned about the first move coming out wide. Got the distance to hold that. Match, cheeky kind of like drop knee squat, heave ho, and then huck up to that thing. reckon on the fly sequence for sure, the right toe up, there's enough goodness on this thing to be able to kind of let go of that left hand for a moment, or at least relinquish some of the overbite. Sick. My approach through all of this has been to not look at the beta that they show you on the phone and see what I can come up with myself. Like I can start this way with my arms crossed rather than like this, and then do the Gaston crimp and up. We'll go crimp underneath to this kind of nice thing and have it become a nice layaway up to the jug. You then go like crimp, pinch wide over, or hit this white, come down to this thing, which I'm assuming is maybe a foot, but you could use it as a hand. Right foot stays here, hit the side pull, maybe left foot up, tag up to just get a bit more height, and then heave-ho over. It's been interesting too, because I feel like there has been quite a spread between the least repeated and the most repeated in terms of difficulty. And I think when you like judge the most repeated with the least repeated of the previous grade, even that, like the least repeated sometimes is felt a little bit harder than the next grade above. This one doesn't look too bad though, but I say that quite often on the Moonboard, and then you get your arse handed to you. In this later part of the session, there was a few more people that came into the bolo, so it became a bit trickier to talk to the camera and get some good audio and everything going on, because it just became a little bit chaotic. But that's the nature of the game with a shared space like this. It's awesome to have it there. I guess I also kind of found that the easier problems were a little bit more like a simple movement and just kind of bigger pulls. I don't know whether that's just my climbing style is better at sort of just pulling through stuff rather than that kind of weird, I do like getting kind of funky with stuff, like weird bendy drop knees and grabby toes and that kind of thing. But yeah, I found that the least repeated ones definitely had more of that awkwardness to the movement. So this goal number 11 was the least repeated of the V11 benchmarks. That last move was a big one and I didn't stick it in the session. And I found myself kind of getting to this point where I've had a bit of a, like, I hesitate to call it a finger injury. It's like, if it was your body, it'd just be like a sniffly nose, which I've got at the moment as I recover from being fairly sick for the last week and a half. Yeah, just had like a sniffly nose finger where it's like, it's not too bad, but If you push it too much, it's gonna hurt itself. I actually find it kind of funny that finger injuries and the Moonboard are synonymous with each other, but people still love it so much. Like, if there was any other tool out there in training climbing that was that injury prone, people would hate it. I don't, like, it's funny, but they've done a good job with the Moonboard creating that psych, and you're all cult followers, you Moonboarders. So I decided to just give it a bit of a rest because it felt like it was really cranking on that finger or hand, whatever it is that is a bit sore. I moved on to the V12 to see how that felt, and that was actually pretty okay. And it was actually just the last move that was a little bit tricky. I think maybe there's something better I could have done with my right foot, maybe keeping it lower and jumping, but I think by this stage in the session I was getting pretty tired and I was becoming a little bit more hesitant to pull hard on that left hand. It is a boulder that I'd like to go back for though, because it was pretty good. I'll definitely go back there, and I think there's like a 13 and maybe a 14 in the system as well. So it'd be cool to go back and see what they feel like and maybe jump into project mode. It'd be cool to actually have the project and get it done. I really enjoy this set compared to the previous iterations. Maybe I'll get a Moonboard under the house as well, next to the Kilter Board. And that Woods board by Menagerie Climb, that looks really good. I'd like one of them as well. Need a shed filled with boards. That'd be sick. Dreams can come true. Overall though, it was a super fun session. I really enjoyed it and was an interesting little experiment to play around with. As I said, I haven't spent much time on the Moonboard, and I'd definitely love to get back on it a little bit more. If you haven't already, check out my Kilter Board clip. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.